My name is Charlie Davies. I'm the co-founder and CEO at TravelTime, and I'm here today to talk about the story of locations through search. And if you're talking about a story, there really is no better place to start than at the beginning. So let's start with where locations came from and how we identify with those locations and the names that we give those locations. It all sort of goes back quite far. Some of the names that we have throughout Europe come from the Romans. Now, I couldn't find a photo of the Romans, so I had to make do with the picture here, or the screen grab of the Monty Python show. But so many locations that we have today are places or regions or territories that were defined through history that we've just kept, and we've grown up with them, and we keep on using them. But the reason so many of these regions were built and coordinated in the first place was because of governance and tax. They were there to essentially control the people inside of them. And we still have the legacy of all of these today. This is a map of England and the counties of England, and many of these were actually Roman regions that we have sort of grown into. But they're static, they're rigid, they've been with us for thousands of years, and they don't necessarily reflect how we really live our lives and use locations today. And what I find really fascinating about these areas, these regions, is that they have become sort of the fabric in which we have sold products. So if you think about newspaper, radio, TV, and then onto classifieds, these areas have become the territories that we use to identify or sell inside of these areas. So these locations over time became sales territories. They became ways to say, this is where their sales team's going to operate. We're going to sell advertising within this region, and we're going to lock people into this specific region as well. It was a very sales-led approach, right down to the region, from the location that we've got from all the way from history. And these sales territories then grew into products. The Yellow Pages in the UK and the US, a great example of a sort of static region growing into a sales territory to then actually become a product where advertising was sold. And it didn't matter whereabouts you were, where the person was. It just mattered that you were inside of a specific polygon, and you were then identified as being available for being advertised to in these areas. It was all purely sales-led. And online replicated many of these models, and it still uses many of them today because the technologies around geospatial were also inherited from the same proposition. And it's really important to also look at the history of the technology, not just where these locations have come from, but how the technology that we use to understand them has grown up as well. I love this photo. I found it in the research for doing the presentation today. It's the Odyssey development group out of Harvard, developed some of the first GIS applications. The tape they're holding up there is actually their software on the mag tape. And Jim Doyenik, in the top left, in 1977, developed the first cartogram, a map by distance. And search has borrowed so much from these technologies that started right back in the 70s. But GIS itself was really built to measure and record the world around us as we saw it, as we interpret it. And that is also through the history of those locations and the static regions that we use. Location has borrowed from these technologies and tried to then form products around them. It's personalizing through the regions. So because I fall inside of London, just show me content from London. Inside of the polygons, or even using the same sort of algorithms that we use to do those cartograms to develop those straight line searches for distance. And the technology came first. It was the technology to understand the locations and the physical environments that we find ourselves in. It did not start with the person. I'm going to just pause and just say that there is a poll running. If you haven't seen it, it's question time. From where you are right now, how long would it take you to get 3 miles away? The chat is open and you can respond inside. The approach has been very much a top-down approach. approach. It's been from the static locations that we've had for millennia, the technologies that were there to record those physical locations, and then location search has been born out of the joining of those two. It hasn't been a bottom-up approach. It's been using what was available and not potentially what was always right, not starting from the beginning, not starting from the person. And today's all about personalization. How can we personalize the technology and the experience to be core to the individual that is doing that search? The sales locations and those database technologies built what location search is today. It was purely geographical, not always personal. Other data can be used to enhance and make those locations more personal, but the core fundamentals of how we search those areas and experience those areas through the technology that exists is geographical, it's not personal. It was never built for search in the first place. But at TravelTime, we asked ourselves, well, what if location search was not defined this way? When we started, we were working in different companies that formed websites into the lowest electable tier of government, really focusing on those micro regions. But what if it was actually focused on the person, with you at the center of any search when it came down to location? Because you are the location, the person, your experience, what you can do. You are the city, the area. You define it, no one else. It doesn't just so happen that you're in London or Berlin or San Francisco and therefore that's where you are. It's exactly where you are. It's people-led. It shouldn't be sales-led. The person at the heart of any location-based search. Because if you take the time and focus actually on the individual, you have to understand firstly where they are and what they can do. Not just the location that they fall into, or the database function that allows a search. It's the combination of location, preference, and mobility, what they're able to do in their physical environment, specifically for their preference and their location. Now at TravelTime, we express this problem in the form of a distance-based search versus our TravelTime search. So the standard default is always to do, what can I do within 1 mile, 5 miles, or 10? It's that nearest neighbor, a KD tree search inside of any database, very performant, and inside of lots of already existing geospatial databases. But none of us can actually walk in a straight line. It's not personal. It doesn't take into account what we can do. Because if you were actually searching what you could do within 45 minutes by driving from where you are in London, this would be the area that you should be searching for. Or 45 minutes by underground, the tube in London, this would be the area. Or 45 minutes by mainland train, city connecting services, that would be the area that you could actually search for. And the benefit is not only much more relevant results by ignoring the areas that are defaulted to by a distance-based search, or even if you take London as the polygon outside of that area, it can also actually highlight areas that one would never really think of as well. Areas that may sit on fast train lines or peninsulas or fast roads. It's able to actually double the relevancy of any location-based search by simply ignoring what the location is and taking where the person is and what they're able to do on the transport networks around them. Location is not a generalized or static or shared. I'm a big believer that it's alive, it's unique, and it's very personal. And a great way to sort of show this is through a living, breathing isochrone that goes throughout the day. So this is between 6 and 7, and I can just show you that, oh, pardon me. As the time changes, that from New York, the public transport network is a living, breathing thing. And we've actually open sourced the tool that is able to build these videos, which I can share with you all later on. But you can really see that location isn't a static thing. It's constantly moving, and what someone's available, what they can do changes all of the time. And that's exactly what we've built into TravelTime Search. It's allowing our customers to put their users at the core of their own personal search. And this has been shown by some of our clients like Total Jobs, where you can search for a job from a specific location within a specific commute time for 45 minutes to search. And then you can see the job results coming back here that are actually listed by commute time. And it's not just in or out, it's every single travel time to every single location. So it can be used in the weighting score to make sure that all of the other preferences to that user can be accounted for as well. It identifies each person's unique location. We have this habit of trying to group ourselves all together and group ourselves with namings, but really a location changes specifically for that person continuously throughout the day, wherever they may be. We've built this into the existing databases that are used, such as Elastic, Solar, and that supports our TravelTime SDKs. But more importantly, it doesn't slow anything down. So it's as fast as a distance-based search. It's able to process hundreds of thousands of locations in just 120 milliseconds. We do not have to default with the existing technology databases that are there. We can start with you as the user, personalize the search and the experience, and curate that specifically for the person. And that is how we would like as TravelTime to take the history of locations, how they've been used before, and enhance those into a service that really accounts for that globally. That draws my presentation to an end. I want to say thank you very much, and I'm going to pass over to Mutu for the questions. Thank you.